I hope that you will forgive my appearance. I have not shaven in now 2 days, I think, and I usually shave every day. Sometimes I will allow myself to skip a day, and even if I skip a day, I always shave up here every day. So it's very rare for me to go this long without even shaving over here. I don't like the way I look with facial hair, first of all. Secondly, it reminds me of bad times when I had a lot of facial hair. I don't have too many pictures of it to share you. I think if you go and check out from my video blog, if you check out the prologue to the prologue video, in the very beginning there's a picture of me with as an example of a full beard that I have. That was back in 2000 and I want to say 2007 off the top of my head. Yeah, so what do I mean when I say that it reminds me of bad times and all that? I mean, it was a time when I don't know, I felt like I had to say, if you'll pardon my language, fuck the system. That was the way that I thought about things. And somehow, the long hair and the beard and anything that was really sort of like hippie-ish to me was a combination of F the system and also like something very natural and earthy. And I won't lie, I had this conviction at the time that I thought it made me sexy. And it's funny how much identity plays into these things, because at the time when I had really long hair, which was usually unkempt, and beard, it was also like I was trying to undo my sense of self, having grown up as a kid and teenager, because I always shaved my head and I was never very stylish. I never put much thought into style. And I mean, I was very deeply depressed as a kid and a teenager, and not only did I suffer from like a lack of self-esteem or a poor self-esteem, but I actually suffered from like astronomically severe extreme self-loathing, and I didn't have too many friends, and I mean, it was really bad. I would look in the mirror and want to punch the wall and cry, because I was so mad at what the universe had given me by way of exterior appearance. And also, I didn't even like my soul, my brain. I just hated myself. And so when I went through my hippie phase, a lot of that had to do with this sort of like experience of a makeover, so that I was no longer that person that I associated with all these bad feelings, that if I could have control over my makeover and my reinvention, that it would be something that I could feel good about. And that was, I felt, was a sense of self, even away from the self that, as opposed to sort of being born with the self, a sense of self being born with, I can't explain it, but it's like, because I was very deterministic, very much a fatalist in my younger days, it was a sense of being handed a self, being handed a soul, being handed a mind, being handed a way, and as if it was just always going to be that way. And though I didn't quite turn into a belief in free will, I landed on this time in my life when I was for the first time aware of a sense of interest in style, and that I could have a sense of style, and even if it wasn't a very deeply volitional experience, or I didn't think of it too much in terms of having free will, but I did experience it in terms of as if it made sense to me to do things like grow my hair really long, and not to do much with it other than let it be wavy like this, or I think I tried to braid it once or twice, and to grow out my beard. And with the hippie thing, I would have to honestly spend a lot of time really reflecting on the depths of the hippie phase and how that all exactly transpired. But I know that a lot of it had to do with the arts that were beginning to intrigue me, like Jack Kerouac and Simon and Garfunkel and Bob Dylan and Jim Morrison. And it was as if the iconography, if you will, of the people and the ethos of the people that interested me, it was as if they had this sense of style that was like the right style, the style that like communed with the universe or God, or like naturalness and cool and poise or something. And I just dove into it. And I went all out. I tie-dyed my shirts, and I put patches on them, and rainbow patches, and I did the same things with my jeans, etc., etc. Point being, this is a part of myself that I actually am not quite proud of, or a part of myself that I associate with a deepening and deepening nihilism. Now, this was quite a long digression. What have I been talking to you about? In fact, I've been talking to you about moving. This is a series of vlogs all on the subject of moving, and specifically moving to a better place by reflecting, also thinking about other moves I've made, oftentimes thinking that it was going to lead to a better place, or oftentimes being pushed actually further away from a sense of a better place. But we had left off, in fact, I was going to tell you a little bit more about my move to South Beach. But first, again, I wanted to apologize for my appearance. I know there may be some people who like the real grungy facial hair, wavy, unkempt hair, t-shirt look. I don't know, the grunge rock look or something. I don't know what you call it, or per se, or if it has to be categorized to suit a sort of stereotypical image. Anyway, but we're moving, right? We're in this process of moving into our condo. And if you saw our living room right now, it is a field of boxes, a field of cardboard boxes. And we've still got a lot of things to take care of. So I've not been paying so much attention to like having my hair as it ought to be and shaving. I brush my teeth though, and I wash my face, but you only have time for so many things, right? You have to budget for and prioritize. I do actually enjoy vlogging slightly more than shaving, though I prefer to be shaven when I do vlog. But I also think it's interesting to capture a time, the sort of reality of the time you're in. Part of my pleasure of video blogging is the fact that I have records of where I am in a sort of spiritual, psychological place. And like I am in this time where I just want to go down the list and get everything done, and not have shaving necessarily be on the top of the list, though certainly it's not at the very bottom. And then, you have these unexpected things happen that you have to make yourself flexible and readjust your list of priorities, your to-do lists, right? So for example, yesterday, two really unexpected things happened that was rather interesting, to say the least. So we go out yesterday to the Home Depot because we want to get necessary cleaning items and the sort, and we got a air purifier because this place is rather dusty, and the previous owner had a dog, and there's hair everywhere. It seems like no matter how much cleaning we do, we just cannot seem to get rid of the hair that's everywhere and all the dust. And plus the dust of the boxes, and the boxes not just being naturally sort of dusty as cardboard boxes and more inherently, but they were in a dusty, dirty U-Haul truck, and they'd been sitting in the apartment we were staying at before, right? So just everything is collecting like a lot of filth, and it would be really nice to be able to breathe in clean air. By the way, all of this experience, and it's something I'm going to have to talk about in much greater length in the future, but a lot of this makes me think a lot about poverty. I mean, you could talk about what it's like to live in a mansion and enjoy exuberant wealth, extreme wealth, but I mean, just the fact, just to be able to have your own 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom private property, just to have that it's not much, right? Compared to, I mean, we live in Basking Ridge. Let's not hide the elephant in the room. There are obviously a number of people here who do very well for themselves financially, which is cool. I don't have a problem with that. If you go one town over to Warren, I don't know how the average incomes compare, but I mean, the houses there are bigger, a lot of them, it seems, at least on a superficial comparison of driving through one town and through the other, not having been thorough or comprehensive or anything. My point being, it is one thing to talk about extreme wealth and the darling properties one can own and how that contrasts with poverty. But I mean, just something as simple as having your own property that you literally own, that is legally in your name, that therefore no one is allowed to trespass or touch or interfere with, and any damages, right, that would be awarded to you, as opposed to the owner of an apartment who you pay rent to. By the way, I mean, obviously we're paying a mortgage, right? It's not as if we snapped our fingers and purchased this in a way that leaves us without any debt or leaves us without a balance due. But we do have legal ownership of this property, and we have space. Actually, I had originally thought our apartment might have been bigger than this condo, but as I'm reevaluating, and I must have gotten the square footage wrong in the contrasts, but it actually does look like this condo is a little bit more spacious. Now look, it's a 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, so we're not living in one of the big, wonderful mansions. By the way, not that I have an inherent philosophical I don't think it's unethical per se to own a mansion. I don't think I have any desire for a mansion. I may have a desire to be as wealthy as I can manage to be, but I'm still not sure I'd want a mansion anyway. But I mean, that's just a whole other complex discussion to get into. The point, however, that I want to make is that even if we are living in something which people might describe as comparatively small compared to all that can be owned and lived in, I still feel extraordinarily lucky and blessed and wealthy and fortunate, and I still think about how there are so many people who don't have a home or shelter as that even reaches this wonderful standard, and it makes me feel sorry, and it makes me feel that that's unacceptable. I do think everybody should at least have a space that's a sort of dignified space, in my opinion, because otherwise I believe that they are in a position that is somewhat like destructive and not conducive to their like most basic well-being. So this is something that is sort of swirling around in my mind and cementing as a predominant thought of necessary further development, if you will. But all of this goes back to how I've been talking, wider scope about my experiences of moving from various places, having been inspired based on this move here to Basking Ridge, New Jersey. And I had left off with living in South Beach, moving to South Beach, and giving you the context. That was when I had dropped out of college for the first time at 19 years old in 2000. So 04, 05, Kean University, 05, 06, FGCU. So fall of 2006, I moved to South Beach from New Jersey. And on the pretext of trying to reignite a romantic relationship that had ended. And so also under the pretext of wanting adventure. After having planned initially to move to the United Kingdom and ultimately not doing so. I was going to move with the girlfriend I had, but that relationship ended. Thus, we didn't move to Great Britain. Thus, I said, well, I'm going to go where she lives and try to bring that relationship back and at least not lose everything that I thought I was working towards at the time. So I moved to South Beach, and the way that I do it is I'm sitting on, having worked throughout the summer of 2006, after dropping out of Florida Gulf Coast University, living back, I think I was living with my father, working at, I can't remember if that was the summer I was working at Dollar Tree or if that was the summer I was working at, I think I was working at Dollar Tree at the time as a cashier. The places I've worked so many damn places, I can't put them all in my head in a proper chronological order all the time. The point being, I made enough money throughout the summer, again, because I was planning on living in the United Kingdom anyway. So I made enough money to be able to afford a move in which I would have several months of basic living space taken care of. Of course, I was roughing it. I was going to live in a hostel. This would be the first time I lived in a hostel. So yeah, I flew down to South Beach and lived in a hostel the first hostel I lived on was in Washington Avenue, if I'm not mistaken. So it was about a block away from the beach, which was really awesome. Unfortunately, I don't remember too much of the experience. I can't, for example, I can't visualize the hostel at all. And that gets on to one of the most unfortunate aspects of having moved to South Beach is when I tell you I was a nihilist and sinking deeper and deeper into nihilism, I'm not exaggerating. And one of the perfect examples of this, to me, is the fact that I had no basic appreciation for the environment, for the beauty of the environment I was living in. I mean, I just basically can't even remember much of it. I have absolutely no memory of the first hostel I lived in. I would eventually move into a second hostel because there was a limit on how long I could stay at the first one, if I'm not mistaken. And so I would move to one very close to, God, I can't remember the name of the street, but it looked Spanish. That's all I can remember about it. And it was a little bit closer to Lincoln Road. Point being, right, it's not something that is as memorable as, like, say, when I visited Cancun when I was in 5th grade, and there were just things that really stuck out really quite immediately. There's a lot I can't remember about my move to South Beach, and it wasn't really because of a faulty memory. It was because I just actually didn't care about a lot of things. I saw a lot of things as not mattering, as not having any substantial value. I'll give you another example of just how nihilistic I was. But first I should tell you, the irony is, I don't know if it's irony, but in terms of like the way philosophy works and ideology and sort of psychological, psychoepistemological, psychological orient or relationship between psychology and ideology and or philosophy, is that you can essentially possess certain ideas and beliefs without knowing anything formally about the belief. You could just happen to actually fall upon that belief through various other means. So I was a nihilist before I had read anything about nihilism, before I'd even heard of the word nihilism. So it's not as if I was consciously a nihilist in those days. I just happened to have fallen deeper and deeper and deeper into nihilism. And it was funny, I worked a number of jobs during the South Beach phase, chapter, whatever you want to call it. Towards the middle period, I guess, it was probably November or December 2006. I remember I was working at this souvenir shop, and this girl from Brazil, I ended up getting into a conversation with her at the souvenir shop. I don't remember the context in which it happened, but I explained that I liked poetry and philosophy, and I was writing something, and she asked if she could read. And it was the first time anyone ever told me I was a genius. I'm not saying that to gloat, or I'm not even saying that she was accurate. I'm just objectively telling you what she said, because as I remember it. And she said, "This reminds me a lot of Nietzsche. Have you ever read Nietzsche before?" And I said, "No." I said that I'd heard of Nietzsche and knew a thing or two about him, but I'd never read him. And she's like, "Oh, you should read Nietzsche. You remind me so much of Nietzsche." And so what's interesting to me in hindsight then is the fact that I appear to be along a recognizably Nietzschean style of thinking before having been exposed to him. And I'm not saying that I'm the only person who would have had that experience, though I'm saying it's interesting that I had that experience, especially as someone as interested in philosophy as I am. To be so akin to a philosopher without really knowing anything about the philosopher. But obviously, not that Nietzsche was like actually advocating ultimately for pure nihilism. Nietzsche actually wants a reevaluation of values, right? He wants us to consider how values have been handed to us. Then he wants us to take hammers to it all and break it in a sort of nihilistic way, and then discover new values for ourselves in such a way that they're very empowering for us and enable us to be like great, powerful people, right? So, of course, I'm getting into a bit of a digression here, but all of this to me is important contextually to really understand where my soul was then, especially in contrast to where it is now. South Beach, among the worst memories I have, I think that my memories of living in South Beach are worse than my memories of living in Fort Myers and Florida Gulf Coast University. I think the only memories that might be worse are the memories of living in Tampa. And I won't get to that today, but I will tell you that was probably the lowest place I've ever been in my life, in almost every way, shape, or form. In South Beach, for a while, right? Because we're talking, really, this isn't a comprehensive analysis of having lived in South Beach and all of the aspects of living in South Beach, right? But this is primarily about my associations with the placeness of South Beach, qua place, qua a distinct place that I moved to, thinking I was moving for particular reasons, though actually being quite detached from why I moved there. I would say, though, while not enamored consciously with particular details of the geography, I was, to a degree, content in that I had no future plan for myself in terms of like where I saw myself living. I think perhaps, at least towards the beginning, and maybe the girl that I was dating at the time remembers me suggesting there was another place I ultimately wanted to live. But the way I remember it now, actually, I would have been, if you were to ask me how did I feel in October of 2006, living in South Beach, I think I might have said that there was no other place I wanted to live. So there was like even if I wasn't sort of actively and consciously savoring the aspects of the experience, I wouldn't say that I was miserable with the geography per se. The whole experience, though, was really something. So it was my first year, it was my first fall not going to school since I started going to school. So since preschool. So there I am, 19 years old, for the first time not needing to go to school. That much made me happy, to the extent which I could experience the emotion of happiness anyway. And I was working all the time. The first job I got, well, I've got to tell you, I'm rather proud of how I landed a job in the first place. It's all sort of, it's trying to piece together this whole thing is quite an activity, especially since I've never actually consciously took the time to reassemble it in my mind. There are a few times I attempted to write a memoir or an autobiography, and I've done a lot of attempts at semi-autobiographical fiction so that I could somewhat access my memories of things like living in South Beach and what that was like, but I never got I don't know that I ever got super exact in my reassembly of it in my mind, though I might have included it in a personal essay about 2 years ago that I was working on, but that's besides the point right now. But where was I going? Job, right? But with respect to initiating the move and how I assembled and orchestrated myself during the early phase of that move and transition from New Jersey life to South Beach life, there was like almost like a period of sparkle in that, okay, I had money. I was very assertive in landing myself a job interview before I got there. And by the time I was settled into my first bunk in the first hostel, I think my first or second day in South Beach, I got the job that I had established an interview for, which was the first one. And that was to be a barback at a bar on Lincoln Road. And that was a job where my function was, among the duties, was to obviously help the bartenders and like stock the ice, clean the dishes. It was also my job to cook and to prep food as well, like to prep raw ingredients and to cook the various sandwiches and stuff. And that all just really turned out to be a disaster for a lot of reasons. So it's interesting in that, in terms of, right, in terms of getting from point A to point B, from New Jersey to South Beach, and putting myself in a situation where I was at least in a setup where I could elevate, make more money, get a better place to live, and actually save money and make something of myself if I wasn't going to go to college, if I was just going to be that poet. Like I set myself up well That much I think I did pretty decently. But then I just let go immediately. Oh, by the way, I think I lied. I'm not sure that was the first job I got. I actually got one job before that. I got a job as a host, I think on Washington Avenue. I don't remember why I hated it, but I quit within a week. I'd only worked maybe 6 days, maybe only 4 days, maybe only 3 days. I don't remember the context in which that happened at all. The only thing I can remember about that was that I worked with a guy from South Africa who had a accent, and I think at first I thought it was British. He was the first person from South Africa I ever met. So this puts us at the 30-minute mark, which means I'm not going to go on any longer. So I think we've done, though, that there's some sense of context and a sense of what's going on as I dive into South Beach, and I'll talk to you more about South Beach in the future. But actually, in the next 2 days, I'm going to take a break from delving too much into the topic on moving. I'm going to take a break from that just because the Democratic primary debates, the first ones on MSNBC, happen tonight and the night after, which means, therefore, a break from discussing moving, though I will continue that on, what's today? Today is Wednesday night, Thursday night. So on Friday, I will move back into South Beach and living in Basking Ridge and what happens from there and talk to you more about moving. But for the next 2 days, I want to, because I'm also very political, and part of the public comment vlog is offering a public comment on politics and offering analysis on politics, both the philosophy behind political and policy ideas that we have, but also really looking at what's happening that's of significance to us as voters, and the state of our country, the state of the world. And I'm also interested on occasion in things of state or local significance here and there would be in my scope of interest. So, okay, next 2 videos after this one will be primarily about the next 2 Democratic debates, because there happened 2 consecutive nights, one after another. I may talk to you about some other things aside from that. You know I do like to go on tangents and digress, just like my hero, Montaigne. However, again, primarily my interest will be in the debates in the next 2 nights. I think I've made that point clear. Okay, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to chatting with you again tomorrow. Have a great day, ladies and gentlemen. I'll chat with you soon. Bye.